Welcome into Point Blank, brought to you by Fitz Roofing. I am Brandon Strange of SportsMap Houston. He is Joel Blank of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5 FM in Houston. If you like our content, please be sure to hit subscribe. Joel, I know it's tough to be optimistic as a Houston fan in general. One team that I am interested in seeing how they play together is this Rockets team with John Wall, Victor Oladipo, and Christian Wood. But together is definitely the operative word here. John Wall will miss his fourth straight game due to knee discomfort. When do you think we'll see John Wall back on the court, active? And how do you foresee him fitting alongside Victor Oladipo and Christian Wood?
I think it's a good roster in terms of a team that can compete to try and get in that playoff, to try and get one of the bottom seeds in the West. I think the West is loaded. It's not any fault of their own, but I think it's either John Wall or A-Wall, because if he keeps being A-Wall and out, whether it's knee injuries or otherwise, we got to remember, Brandon, we're only on a 72-game schedule as it is. And now with the transition from Harden and the offense and the system that you're not using anymore to getting all these new guys and pieces acclimated to each other. So I would hope by the weekend that John Wall is playing again. The time is short. The urgency is high. And you feel bad for Stephen Silas because here's a guy that didn't sign up for this, yet this is the hand he's dealt and he's forced to deal with. And now you have some pieces. Do you have enough time to bring them all together, get them to gel and mesh, and make a push?
One of those challenges that this team is facing right now, besides body count, is issues with defense. How much of these defensive challenges are due to this constant, changing, shuffling of the lineup? They can't get chemistry, so guys don't really know where they're supposed to be at defensively? Or is that even reasonable to expect that?
I think it's difficult, Brandon, because you have to take into the other factor of James Harden. Because you were going to play a certain way with James Harden. Now you've got a coach trying to implement a different defensive strategy now that Harden's out. Oladipo can play defense. A bigger loss, too, in terms of team defense has been the fact that Daniel House has missed multiple games. Daniel House is athletic. He's long. He can play multiple positions defensively. So I think that all those things factor in.
Okay, I want to ask you where you foresee or how you see this team ending up, where you see them being seeded at the end of the season. But before I get your answer on that, give us a word from Fitz Roofing.
We love the people at Fitz Roofing. Look, they're great people doing great things in Houston, Texas. Their warranties, their products, they're the best in the business. So are their reviews. But the main thing is they'll come out to you for free and do an estimate, and you can figure out if you want them to do the work or not. If you do, they have the best products in the business. They do the best job. It's 832-521-3001. Call them today. It's all for free. It's fitzroofing.com.
Joel, if the Rockets can get Wall back into the lineup and get some meaningful minutes out of him, if they can get anything out of Boogie Cousins, if they can, start to gel a little bit, where do you see this team? Because there's clearly some talent on paper. John Wall, Victor Oladipo, Christian Wood, a budding star there. And maybe Cousins in a very, very limited role if you can, control his minutes and get the very best out of Cousins. Because what we've seen in small spurts is he's an amazing passer, but maybe the rest of his game is very, very rusty. Where do you see this team finishing realistically?
I think realistically, Brandon, it goes between 7 and 10. I think they can be in that play-in tournament to try and get one of the last couple of seeds. I think that when you look at the way the West sits currently as of today, there's 8 teams that the Rockets are not better than in the West that are in the playoffs, and Denver's not in the playoffs right now, so there's a 9th. So I think that if they get, and there's a lot of ifs and buts, Eric Gordon's an if and a but. If he plays and plays consistently, which is a big if, he could be a big factor in that team getting closer to 7 or 8 so that this team truly can see what they have and if it's worth making a playoff push. If they don't, look for this team to completely press the reset. Look for them to see if anybody's willing to take Eric Gordon. Look for the highest bidder for PJ Tucker, even if it's a second-round pick and some future considerations. That's why the next 10, 15 games are critical. That's why healthy as much as gelling becomes a big factor.
How much of hitting that big reset button on the roster and doing the big rebuild with the capital R, how much of that is dependent on whether Oladipo decides to stay in Houston or not?
Well, I think that's it too. I think that, he said all the right things once he finally got here. Now, if he continues to play and play well, he's going to factor in too, because if they have a chance to make the playoffs, they'll stick with him probably, take their chances if he doesn't want to come back in free agency of using that money and going with the rebuild. But if they're not going anywhere and things aren't happening, look for them to try and flip him, to try and get maybe some extra picks and maybe some young players that can help them in the rebuild process. He's as big a factor in terms of could he stay or could he go, just like PJ Tucker and Eric Gordon.